Fight Talk. This past weekend, Saturday night, UFC 292. This week, the name on the marquee, gentlemen, has got to be Sugar Sean O'Malley, who this past weekend at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, in front of 18,000 strong at UFC 292, defeated Aljamain Sterling by TKO in round number 2, the official time, 51 seconds of round number 2. In doing so, becoming the newly crowned UFC bantamweight champion. Mark, let me start with you. What was your take on the performance, first of all, of Sean O'Malley and the meteoric rise of this guy from where he came from to where he is now, and just the star that he has become and is continuing to bloom into?
Yeah, I mean, Sean O'Malley did it, man. None of us thought that he would, and he did it. He finished the champ. He finished him in style. And I don't know if you've seen the side-by-sides that they've been putting out there with his shot on Aljo and Conor's shot on Aldo. But, man, It is crazy how the sports world always gives us poetic things like this. To have this kid whose game is so similar to Conor's, in terms of the footwork and the feints and the movement and the striking acumen and that one-hitter-quitter power. He's so similar in so many ways. To have him win a belt with the same exact shot Conor won his with is just nuts to me. But he was brilliant, man. I've heard a lot of people saying, oh, what a strange fight. I can't believe Aljo didn't try to wrestle. Why did he think he should strike with Sean? I promise you Aljo wanted to wrestle in that fight. In fact, it's the only thing he wanted to do. He almost didn't even throw a single punch in round 1 because he had no intention of trying to strike with Sean. All he threw was kicks to keep O'Malley off him and try to force him to move in a way where he could find an entry that he liked. But the problem was that it didn't work. He could not find an entry where he felt comfortable. Early on in the fight, he was trying to pressure Sean, trying to make him move in a way that would open something up. He couldn't create any opportunities there. Then 2 minutes in, he switched it up. He was like, all right, maybe I'll back up. I'll make Sean come to me and I'll find something. No different. Sean's footwork was just too damn good. He was too elusive. His feints had Aljo frozen. He was thinking too much. And he couldn't find any entries where he felt like he wasn't going to get cracked in the face by a Sean O'Malley right hand. And he did finally grab a leg with 20 seconds left in round 1. But at that point, it was too late for him to do anything with it. Round 2, he gets his break. Sean falls, which gives Aljo the opening to rush and clinch up as Sean stood back up. And this was the one that Sean had to get away from. And you find that after the fight, Sean was pretty banged up and wasn't even able to grapple in this camp. So props to him because he did. He got away. He escaped. Aljo, he had that little taste of being able to grab a hold of him. And maybe he got a little frustrated and he was like, you know what, I can punch my way right back inside. I'll get him against the fence again. And he couldn't. He lost the belt because of it. He made one mistake, and O'Malley was that damn dialed in that all he needed was one mistake. And he got it, and he dropped Aljo on his face with a step-back counter right that couldn't have been more perfect. And Aljo stayed in it, to his credit. I do get the people saying, he was trying to get back to his knees at the time of the stoppage. But Goddard doesn't know that. It's a bunch of clean shots. Goddard's trying to give Aljo a chance. He sees Aljo roll over to his stomach, and he thinks that's Aljo saying that's it. He stops it, then the knees come. You can't tell that that's going to happen. So I don't have an issue with it. O'Malley earned every single inch of that, and Sugar Sean is the new UFC bantamweight champion.
Yeah, man. Mark Twain said, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And very applicable here.
Love that.
And how this really knockout very much echoes the knockout of Conor. And how funny that the names of the opponents literally do rhyme with Aldo and Aljo.
Yeah.
Omar,
wow.
Take us through that finishing sequence. What did you find most effective and most beautiful in that cannon of a right hand that Sean O'Malley employed so well?
It's the timing. It's the timing and it's the distance management. I mean, if you watch that fight in slow motion, if you've watched MMA as much as we've watched MMA, there's no way that in that moment when you saw that punch happen, you didn't immediately think to yourself, holy shit, that's McGregor and Aldo. You must have seen it immediately because it was the same type of timing, the same type of step back. It was obviously different sides, right? Because McGregor throws, left crosses, whereas O'Malley throws right crosses. But regardless, the movement and the timing and the technique was virtually the same. The entry was almost just as relatively sloppy as each other's were, right? Aldo, for as much as we love Aldo, and Aldo does have very good technique, in that fight, I think he got a little too wild, came in with some really cocked back hooks, and both of his hands were down when he was going in for that punch. So, I mean, he ate something that normally I think if he had his head on straight, probably wouldn't have eaten in a fight. And Aljamain was just a little too sloppy in there as well. Like, he's always been very unorthodox. He's always been very quote unquote funky, right, with his movement and his striking style. But the reality is against a sniper like that, and we talked about the sniper shit last week. Against a sniper like that, you can't make those kind of mistakes, and you can't put yourself within the range of the shot. And, Mark mentioned that I'm sure, that he's sure that O'Malley or that Sterling was trying to go for a takedown, that's what he wanted to do, that's what he wanted to grapple. I don't necessarily disagree, but it does sound like Aljamain, and we've seen this happen before, even with Luke Rockhold, where the guys go in there and they're like, maybe not necessarily overconfident, but they've gotten so much momentum, they've put themselves in a position where I think that they feel like they need to perform or maybe overperform and overcompensate maybe for whatever, right? Crowd pleasing or whatever the case is. And it did sound like even after the fact, Aljamain was like, I tried to go in there and I tried to do a little too much. I tried to want to win in kind of a crazy, fantastic way instead of just focusing on my game and doing what I know I needed to do. And it's very possible things might have turned out differently had he approached the fight a little bit different. Who knows? It really doesn't matter because the fight went the way it went. And O'Malley knocked that kid's head clean off for the belt. What an absolute performance.
Sean O'Malley has had, in my estimation, 2 tough fights in his career. Those being the Chito Vera fight and the Petr Yan fight. The Yan fight truly was very close. And Yan was the best striker that he's ever faced. And Chito, I mean, that fight ended towards the end of the first round with Chito winning by TKO. But up until the knee,
that had a lot more to do with his injury, though, in the fight.
I mean, the leg sort of going to sleep because of the nerve thing.
Yeah. And who's not to say that Chito, the perennial nerve? Perineal, maybe. I can't remember. But I know that had much more to do with the story than just, quote-unquote, Chito beating O'Malley.
Oh, it was the story, yeah. That's why he always says he's undefeated.
Yes.
Yeah, he's like that fight didn't even happen. Like
it's not even that he's undefeated, right? That he beat Chito.
Yeah. Granted, the thing that happened to his leg happened because Chito was kicking it, so it's not the cleanest.
It also had happened before. Like he was on one leg in a fight prior to that as well, where he hobbled around for a minute before he won that fight.
That was the Sukumtat fight, right?
Yep. Yeah, and Sukumtat did the wrong thing and took down a dude with one leg instead of making him stand up and fight. But we're not going to do that to that poor man right now. We're just going to let him be.
That's true. So Sean O'Malley, man, he has not lost since that Chito Vera loss back in August of 2020, and he's now captured UFC gold. What do we see as being next for him? It's really not quite up to. I mean, he would say that it is very much up to him. But Mark, if you were the matchmaker of the UFC, what would be the match that you would most want to see? What do you think the fans most want to see, and what do you think makes the most sense?
There's a few ways to tackle this thing. The most obvious answer and the correct answer is, well, I'm going to even pivot off of that. Firstly, there's an argument to be made that Aljo should be getting an immediate rematch with the run that he has had. If we look past that, the correct answer is Merab. He is very clearly the number one contender. If it's not going to be Aljo, that's who it should be. However, I think the UFC is very aware of what they now have in Sean O'Malley. I think they are very aware of the moneymaker that he is. I don't know if you guys saw this. They uploaded the knockout to Twitter immediately after the fight, which they never, ever do for pay-per-view fights. So you could see the knockout immediately after all over Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. and they uploaded the full fight to YouTube. That's how much they want people to be seeing this, because they know what O'Malley is in terms of viral and all the clicks he gets and all this. So if I had to guess, I think they know that Aljo is capable of beating him, and that certainly Merab is capable of beating him. And I think they would very much like him to get at least one title defense before he has to worry about being out-grappled again. And I think they are going to go with the Chito fight.
Whew. Even though Chito beat him.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he can't lose to Chito as well. I just think it's fairly obvious that Chito is a bit safer of a matchup than a Merab.
Right. And with the added bonus that there already is so much heat to that rivalry.
Yes, and that it's what Sean wants and all of this. But yeah, I mean, Chito's interesting in his own right because you can't hurt him, and he lands huge shots. So like, if he doesn't go away, he could find a shot of his own. It's not like he doesn't have a chance. But again, I think it's a safer matchup than a Merab is.
Yeah, it's true. I think Merab would be really tough stylistically for.
Yeah, I mean, think about what he just did.
Merab just doesn't stop.
Petr Yan. Like, imagine he did that to Sean O'Malley, and then everyone's like, "Oh wow, all right, well that Sean O'Malley thing is over with." Like, they don't. I don't think they want that this soon. I really don't.
It would be the biggest buzzkill for O'Malley's first title defense to just get wrestled into dust.
Yeah.
For 5 rounds by this like Energizer Bunny guy, Merab. And I love Merab. I love what he stands for. I do love Merab as a personality in MMA. I mean, the whole stealing the jacket and putting it on right in front of the world.
Yeah, the storyline is there. And it's going to be tough to say to Merab, if they go that route, to say that he's not getting it, because he's going to be like, how the fuck am I not getting it? But
yeah.
But you're right, too, that like it's a compelling argument for Aljamain Sterling. I mean, I'm looking at his record now, and before this loss, he was on a 9-fight UFC win streak, including winning the title, and then 3 consecutive title defenses going into this past weekend. I feel like, right when he lost, or I think even before, I think during the fight, I was like, if he loses, I feel like Aljo's kind of right on the bubble of deserving an immediate rematch. A la someone like Kamaru Usman. But, yeah, I think you're right. I think promotionally it makes more sense for Chito. But, Omar, let me get you in here. What are your thoughts on what could be next for the bantamweight belt?
So as far as my personal opinion, I do think it should be a rematch. I prefer rematches happen when somebody gets caught. If O'Malley had like beaten the shit out of Aljo for 5 rounds or something, like there's no need for a rematch. We don't need any of that, right?
Right.
There was a lot of feeling out. There was a lot of movement and attempted distance management from Aljo in that fight and stuff like that. But like we had never really gotten into a major clash in that fight, right? Like they were both trying to find their moment and their shots, and O'Malley found his. And that's just kind of how the fight went. And we're not taking anything away from O'Malley, but there are still questions on the table about what could have happened in that fight if something had gone different, if Aljo didn't get caught. And so I think just having another one of those fights to see if Aljo can get caught again, if Aljo can do something different, I just think would be like in their best interest personally. Because Aljo is, a great champion. He is very credentialed. He's beaten a ton of guys. Like it's very difficult to not call him one of the greatest bantamweights, if not the greatest bantamweight currently of all time. So I think he deserves the rematch. From what it sounds like, and this is something I heard Ray Longo speak about, it sounds like that they've asked him about what he wants, and he sounds like he wants a rematch, probably early 2024. So it's very possible that that's the route that they're going. I wouldn't be surprised, depending on what the time frames are, how things line up, and all that stuff. Maybe somebody else gets in there before, maybe Merab, maybe Chito. But from what I've kind of heard around, it does seem like Aljo might be getting that rematch.
Well, just because Longo's saying it. What do you mean? Why does that make?
Well, because Longo, it's not that Longo said it. Longo had a conversation with, I don't remember which one it was, if it's Maynard or if it's, I don't remember who deals with which weight class, but one of the two guys, right? Mick Maynard or what's his face?
Yeah.
What's the other one?
Sean Shelby?
Sean Shelby. So he was having a conversation with him and Aljo about the situation, and apparently they asked Aljo what he wanted to do and that he could, that they'll take into consideration what he wants to do and stuff like that. And he said, I want the rematch, because I guess they wanted to make sure that that's something that he wanted, because he was also talking about going up to 145 after this fight. But it now seems like he wants to stay at 135, at least for the rematch, and then potentially do something else after that. So
I'm not saying that's not legit, but I'm sure they then also went and had the same conversation with O'Malley and said, what do you want to do? And I'm sure
I don't doubt it either.
Rematch. So
yeah, and I'm sure O'Malley had his sights on Chito. He's been going back and forth with him on Twitter a little bit. He was going back and forth with Henry too, if I'm not mistaken. Henry tried to insert his chooch ass into that conversation.
Granted, he keeps saying he wants to fight Chito in December, so
right,
you could do that, and then
yes.
if he wins, then okay, Aljo's going to get his rematch in April. Like, that's not hard to do. Aljo doesn't need to fight in between.
And I'm perfectly okay with that, because Aljo does take a little while. He said he doesn't want to fight for the rest of the year. He says he's done. He's on vacation. So that's totally fine. And if he can make an O'Malley, I can't imagine O'Malley can't be ready by the end of the year, considering he took no damage in that fight. So I could definitely see that happening. And I think it should happen if we're going to do it that soon. Yeah.
And you're gonna have
he didn't seem like he got beat up either.
I mean, he never does. You could hit him with a bat, and he'd be like, yeah. But they'd have to find a fight for Marab, and maybe it'd be Cejudo again, if they could convince them both that that's what they need to do.
Yeah.
I'm saying again because it was supposed to happen, not that it has happened.
All right. In the interest of time, shall we move on?
Okay.
Very well. In the co-main event, UFC 292, once again, in front of 18,000 strong at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, Zhang Weili defended her women's strawweight title for the second time in a now second title reign against Amanda Lemos, shutting her out of the scorecards. This was utter domination every single round. The scorecards read 50-43, 50-44, and 49-45. So, one judge gave Santos 1 round, I think.
Chooch. He gave her round 4.
Yeah. Either way, pretty much across 25 minutes, Zhang Weili showed the world that she is probably going to be here to stay with the women's strawweight strap this time. Omar, let me start with you. What do you feel was the story of this fight between these two incredible women?
To be honest, man, it was very hard to get any other read other than Amanda Lemos was not ready for a championship opportunity. Zhang Weili is on a different level. She beat the crap out of that girl. I thought she won every single round. I don't even know how many 10-8 rounds you could give her in that fight, to be honest. The round 4, and I talked about this in the text message thread with you guys, but the round 4 scoring for Lemos was probably just a moment where Lemos didn't look as bad in that round as she did in every other round. And so I think that sort of juxtaposition in round 4 against every other round probably let somebody be like, oh, maybe she won that round, and maybe edged it for her. But if you go back and rewatch that shit, there's no way you're going to tell me she won that round.
Yeah, I did. And she did not.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Zhang Weili won that fight handedly, 1 through 5. The only thing we really need to discuss, frankly, about the scoring is which rounds were 10-8 and which rounds were 10-9.
Yeah.
That's it.
Mark, let's get you in here. What do you feel was the story of the fight that was such a difference maker between Zhang and Lemos?
The story was that it was an ass whooping from Weili and a statement to the rest of the women in this division, I think. She beat Lemos up for 25 minutes straight. I said the wrestling and the grappling would be a key advantage for her. That certainly came to bear, and then some. But I also said that I expected Lemos to fade, and even watching live, as much as Lemos was toughing things out early, I was like, holy hell, there's no way this girl makes it the full 25. And she did. So I got to say I was wrong on that one. She toughed it out. Props to her for being as tough as she is, because she did take a beating, but she did not have much to offer Weili. And honestly, that's kind of what I thought going in. I really didn't think she did. She had the power, which of course we knew. There were a couple times where she caught Weili with a stiff shot, and it was like, oh, there's a good one. But Weili had 10 routes to take the fight, and she had 1. and there was nothing that she could do to overcome that. So Weili picks up her second first title defense, if that makes any sense.
That's right. Yeah, her second first title defense.
And now she will have a chance to, really establish herself here if she can turn back the next two girls who seem to be in line, because there's some big fights coming up for her.
Yeah, we will get to that. But for anybody who's a little bit confused by what Mark just said about the second first title defense, Zhang, just recapping her record real quick, since 2019, she defeated Andrade for the belt, then defended successfully against Joanna, then lost to Rose, and then she lost to Rose again in the rematch, and then she beat Joanna again, and then she won the belt back by defeating Esparza, and now another successful title defense. So hoping history doesn't repeat itself or rhyme for her this time, and repeats the same sequence of results here. Dude, I also felt like there was a few moments in this fight where I was pleasantly surprised by the dog that was in Amanda Lemos, because she was really getting beat up, and I was like, damn, this girl's fucking sticking this shit out, man. And her power never goes away, of course, and that girl can crack. And there was maybe one or two moments, there was a handful of moments where like you said, she landed some hard shots on Zhang. There was maybe one or two of those that I felt really got Zhang's attention.
There was
and
one in round 4 where I was like, oh, shit.
Yeah. And I thought to myself for a moment, I was like, is Amanda Lemos going to find a shot that either puts Zhang out or sits her on her butt, and then she jumps on her and gets a TKO, and we have an Amanda Lemos champion? But Zhang was able to get the fight to the mat pretty much at will and make the fight her fight for 25 minutes. So props to both of these ladies. But now let's talk about...
To your point real quick,
yeah.
I thought it was just a great statement from Weili, because I had a little moment where I felt the same as you. Not entirely. Like, Weili was controlling it. But in that fourth round, it started to seem like whenever they had like a prolonged exchange on the feet, Weili was kind of getting beaten it a little bit, which had not been the case all fight. And I had that little feeling of like, oh my God, are we going to get into round 5 and it's going to be like striking and she's going to get caught? And then in round 5, they do strike and she drops Lemos.
Exactly.
So to see that was just like, oh, okay. I'm sorry, Weili, for even doubting that you were not going to dominate this entire thing.
Yeah, dog, and if you really took a look at that right hand that she planted on Lemos' face to drop her, holy shit.
Yeah.
That is a beast of a right hand from that woman.
Dude, how good is she? She's so good.
The thing that's really ridiculous about Zhang is she's getting better. Like, she was elite fucking 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago. And she's getting better. Like, the difference in how she's fighting now, and I don't even know necessarily if it's technique, because she's always been a very technical fighter. Yeah. But the strength that she has at this point is stupid. The IQ that she seemingly has in that octagon is also ridiculous as well. And so if you take the technique that she kind of already brought to the octagon in her early UFC days, you add all these championship elements to it, and she's still getting better working with guys like Cejudo and whoever else. Like, damn, Zhang is really good, and it's going to be, I mean, we're going to get into these picks right now, but people like Tatiana Suarez that we, rave and talk about because of how good and dominant they are, those are probably going to be the only fighters at this point going forward that I can even consider beating Weili Zhang, because the girl is absolutely fantastic.
She's grown leaps and bounds in the grappling. Yes. From the time that Rose out-grappled her, she was like, this is never happening to me again. And you can see it.
For sure. All right, let's talk about where these ladies go from here. Let's start with the champ, Weili Zhang. Mark, what do you think? You mentioned two ladies who are in line.
Yeah, so, I mean, obviously it could go either way, the two ladies being Yan Xiaonan and Tatiana Suarez. We've said it before on here. Personally, I still think it makes too much sense to try to book an event in China and headline it with Weili against Xiaonan Yan. I'd be surprised if they can't come up with a way to do that, because they have tried for years to improve their foothold in China and their viewership in China. Yeah. And you don't get an opportunity for a huge Chinese fight every day of the week. As you know, if you've watched MMA for a while, there's not a ton of Chinese fighters at the top. So you have this in your lap right now. I would be very surprised if they don't find a way to book an event over there and have this headline it. But you never know. You never know what goes on behind the scenes. Maybe they can't get an event over there for one reason or another. Who knows? So wouldn't shock me if it ends up being Suarez somehow. I don't think they're going to ask Suarez and Jan to fight each other. I feel like that would be stupid. But, yeah, my guess will be Jan.
I feel like you have a handful. You have like just enough like Chinese and also Asian athletes on the roster to kind of fill out that card. Like you can have like a
you could do it. And
Song
you put the,
Yudong. You can have
you
the
could put the
Iron
co-main-
Turtle.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. I was just going to say
No, it's all good.
you could put the co-main with non-Asian stars if you needed to, just to have some big names on there, and then you fill it out after that.
Right.
Yeah, the Li Jing Liangs, the Dongying Parks. You know, there's Su Young Woo's. No, he's Korean.
Everyone you just named is not Chinese.
But still, it's
Li Jing
it's gonna
Liang is
be
Chinese.
Like, Li is Chinese, right?
Lee is
Lee is
Chinese. I'm sorry.
Chinese.
I take that back. That's
Yeah.
right. He is.
Park and Suwoo Choi, I think, are both Korean.
Yes.
Do you think it's cool that they're Asian and not Chinese, or is it like insulting?
To be on the card?
Right. I don't know.
Yeah.
The way that question was formed was very odd.
Yeah, that was a tough way to ask the question. You're saying would the
Sorry.
Chinese fans respond well to other
Other Asian continent fighters.
Yeah, I think
I don't-
they'll be all right.
Yeah, I don't know what the politics are over there, but it does seem like every time they go to the Saitama Super Arena, everybody's chill with everybody. So
Yeah.
That's cool.
I mean,
That's
granted,
seems
that's
like it's
Japan, but yeah.
yes, but I'm saying just because obviously they get more than just Japanese fighters
Yeah.
when they go to Japan. So you know, it seems like from a fighting perspective, maybe they're all chill with each other. I don't know what the politics are between the different countries that are in that region, though.
My guess is it would be all right.
Yeah.
I feel like they would. I think like Adesanya in the co-main would be cool because I feel like he's huge in Asia.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
exactly what you could do. Granted, putting him in a co-main is a little tough, but
That's true.
yeah.
I
he
mean,
is-
you could definitely put him as a main event and put Weili as the co-main event, and I think it would still fucking
I guess,
skyrocket.
but I feel like you want to be able to say like the
Right.
main event, China's own Weili, China's own Yana. Like, I feel like
I
that's
mean,
the whole-
if you listen to the internet, they're going to be like China's own Israel Adesanya too, if we're being honest. So, I mean,
if you guys show
true. Let's talk about really quick. Let's talk about Amanda Lemos and where she could go from here. Omar, when you look at the landscape of women's strawweight, what do you think could be next for the heavy hitter, Amanda Lemos?
so I was looking at it, and I really tried to get down into a fight that I thought would be interesting and would be a fight of consequence for both of these ladies. The reality is I don't really know what the time frame is going to be, or even if it's possible because of the time frame. Amanda Lemos obviously just having finished fought, got a little beat up. I doubt she'll be out for super long, but I don't think she's taking a fight within the next couple months or anything like that. But I was thinking about Virna Jandiroba. Jandiroba was removed from a fight, I believe, back in June because of a knee surgery that she needed. So she did get a knee surgery in June. Maybe 6 months? So you're talking about maybe just before the end of the year she'll be healed. You give her another maybe 3-4 months to sort of like get everything back in order. Maybe the early 2024, spring 2024, you can make that fight happen. I'd be down for that.
Cool, man. Mark, what do you think?
Yeah, it's the same place I was going. It's weird with Lemos. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of options for her. But Jandiroba would make sense. The only thing that would throw a curveball into that is if they did end up booking the Chinese headliner and they needed a fight for Tatiana Suarez, I kind of feel like her fight would actually be Jandiroba, which then makes it really hard to book Lemos. You'd kind of have to go down the line and maybe even end up fighting like a Luana Pinheiro or someone who hasn't really quite made the name yet. But yeah, if it works, that's who I would go with.
Okay, let's move on. In the welterweight division, Ian Machado Garry defeats Neil Magny by unanimous decision, shutting him out on the scorecards. Scorecards read 30-26, 30-26, and 30-24, all for your winner out of Ireland, Ian Machado Garry. Mark, let me start with you. What was the story of this fight?
How good is Ian Garry?
I mean,
We have never seen someone toy with Neil Magny the way that Ian Garry just did. I mean, he dropped him with a leg kick about 10 different times. I should have rewatched and counted it up. It started with the very first leg kick 5 seconds into the fight, so he must kick pretty damn hard. The only negative here, and I was noticing it live, is that Ian really wanted a headshot knockout, and he tried everything he could to find it, but he couldn't. So instead we got a decision when it could have easily been a TKO. Like, he had about 5 different times where he could have just thrown like 3 more repeated low kicks and Keith Peterson would have waved it off. You could tell Keith was wanting to jump in, but Garry never did. Every time he had that opportunity to just like pepper it a couple more times and end the fight, he really tried to set up the headshot KO because he wanted to be able to put Magny out cold and have it on the highlight reel. And I get it, but you know, he could have got himself a finish, but I don't think it matters so much in the long run because everyone understands how dominant that performance was. And props to Magny for refusing to quit, even though his leg was absolutely shot. But there was not much he could do in there. Ian Garry is clean as hell. He is a fantastic striker. This was supposed to be a bit of a wrestling test, and it certainly was not. So the defensive wrestling of Ian Garry will have to be tested another day. But, man, I mean, he showed out against Neil Magny in every single way. He got himself 2 30-26s and a 30-24, I think it was. So, again, who's doing that to Neil Magny? Yeah, Ian Garry has arrived, folks. The man has arrived.
Omar, what'd you think of those leg kicks?
dog, who's having 10-8 rounds across the board in a 3-round fight, period? Like, it's... I mean, he was saying it in the post-fight interview, and I didn't even double-check this because I wasn't even sure if that was true, but I think he said Khabib was the last person to do something like that. And who was that, against Trujillo? When he got 1,000 takedowns on him or something like that?
Definitely not Trujillo. That was the fight that some people thought he lost.
Oh, all right. One of these fights, apparently, that he was talking about, I thought it was ridiculous either way, but the way that he was able to control that fight, I can see where everybody... First of all, actually, before we get into it, the internet is a wild place, right? And we go over this a lot, and I'm not going to harp on it too much, but I am going to say, watching all of these unathletic, useless motherfuckers on the internet talk about how Ian Garry can't finish a guy on one leg should go jump off a fucking bridge. That is the most ridiculous statement I have ever heard anybody ever say in the world when they do nothing on their own. It's crazy.
It's stupid, yeah.
Yes. So we'll leave it there. Ian Garry's a beast, man. Ian Garry's leg is an absolute baseball bat. The way he was able to just continuously pepper Neil Magny in that fight and continuously move forward, measure his distance, have it the entire time. Never lost his distance management, was always back in a good fight stance every time that they disengaged. It was a beautiful performance. From a technique standpoint, you're rarely going to see something a lot better than that. The other big takeaway I had from it was, I think one of the big reasons, at least in my head, and I say this as somebody who's never been in a professional fight or anything like that, but it looked like fun. What he was doing in there just looked like fun to do. And there may have been something about Ian Garry just kind of enjoying himself doing what he was doing. And I don't know if he was necessarily really thinking about the KO or the TKO. I think he was just cruising. I think he was enjoying beating the shit out of Magny. And I think it was just that simple, to be honest. It was a great performance. No one to this day, I think, is going to be able to do that to Neil Magny. They might be able to finish him, catch him in chokes, and, catch him with a KO or something like that. That totally can happen. I don't think we're ever going to see anybody 10-8 completely Neil Magny in a fight ever again.
That's probably true. Only the second time in Neil Magny's career that he has lost back-to-back fights. The last time that happened was back in 2013, a good decade ago. Wow. Neil Magny now falls to 28-11. So let's start with him real quick. Omar, staying with you at the landscape of the welterweight division, looking at that, what do you think could be next for the Haitian sensation?
So we had a lot of feel like there were a few fights on this card that people dropped out of, replacements were made, and things like that. And even after this fight, Ian Garry moves up past Neil Magny, but Jeff Neal, I think, is still in front of him. So let's get him to fight Jeff Neal. Get Jeff Neal asses back in there. Let them fight, and let's see if. I don't know why that came out twice. I have no idea. Jeff Neal.
Hands of Steel, Jeff Neal.
Jeff Neal.
That he should just shorten it like that.
Yeah. But that's where I want him to go. It sounds like Wonder Boy is now everything anybody's talking about, and I could see that as well just because of the striking acumen between the two of them. It's hard not to want to see that just for your own sake.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But I still want to see the Jeff Neal fight. I still think that Ian Garry is better than Jeff Neal, and I just want him to be able to prove it.
I don't think I can think of any other fight at welterweight that I would want to see more than the fucking fireworks that would be Stephen Thompson versus Ian Machado Garry.
Oh, so I found out Ian, it seems the story as to what happened between Ian and Neil Magny leading up to that fight seems a little rocky, but it sounds like it started between after a reporter asked Neil Magny about the shirt that Ian Garry was wearing with the mugshot of Jeff Neal. And it seems like that's where it started. It seems like Neil Magny might have had his own opinions about that. And I think that's where the ass whooping stuff came from. And I don't promote fights like that and blah, 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 blah. So that might have been the catalyst of it all. And then it all kind of snowballed from there. But just a little context.
Didn't Neil Magny just said some kind of flippant comment of I'm going to whoop him like I whoop my kids or something like that?
Speaking of which, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole right now, and I don't even know if this is true, but Magny made that comment about how sometimes you got to whoop your kids and keep them in line, and I know that very well now with my own son. And then I saw someone on Twitter say his son is 3.
Oh, so that's a lot.
So, what are we talking about?
I hope he's not whipping a 3-year-old.
Yeah.
But I just thought that he kind of, even as, I'm a father of a toddler now as well. And I know, Mark, you also can empathize with the frustrations that can come with parenting a toddler. And I'm certainly not advocating that anybody should beat their toddler or their 3-year-old or whoever, or a child of any age in this day and age. But that being said, it just seemed like a throwaway comment that people would say, I'm going to whoop you like I whoop my kid. And it seemed to me like Ian Garry just took that and ran like Forrest Gump running out of his house.
Would you ever say out of your mouth that you're going to whoop someone like you whoop your kid?
On public TV with cameras in front of you and the whole world watching?
Because I don't whoop my kid, so why would that come out of my mouth?
I guess.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a strange one. And not
it is a strange one.
I get it that some people were raised that way and they think whatever. But if your kid is 3, I don't get it. I got a big problem with it, actually.
Dude,
yeah. So
yeah, you're right. I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole. I have a neighbor who was an older lady who just off the cuff was visiting us and holding my baby, and was like, "Yeah, I raised my 5 kids, and you whip them with the belt and just oh shit."
You can give me back my fucking child right now.
And then she left, and I was like, I think she literally beat her kids old school back 30 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, she doesn't listen to podcasts, so I don't think she's going to hear this.
Anyway, to circle back, me and Omar are on the same page with a lot of these matchups tonight because I agree. I know he asked for Wonder Boy. Obviously, as you said, it's incredible. I love it. Sign me up. Apparently, Wonder Boy said he's not super interested in it. But to me, that's fine because I agree with Omar. Go right back to Jeff Neal. I don't see any reason not to do it. I don't think beating Neil Magny has made it like he passed by Jeff Neal already. I still think that fight makes plenty of sense.
I think at this point, though, you have to have a backup. Jeff Neal can't pull that shit again.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
Can I just match up Magny real
Oh, my bad. Yeah, go do it.
Oh, yeah.
I actually said last time Magny fought that I would pair him with Randy Brown next. Obviously, he then jumped in here short notice, but I still think that's what I'm going to do. He took an L. I think he's got to fight someone who's trying to come up here, and I think Randy Brown's perfect.
Yeah.
Like it. Like it a
We
lot.
are in a hallway here because there's not going to be a lot of changing in the way that we're looking at the future here, because I also have him against Randy Brown as well. So agreed.
Oh, the boys are in
Okay.
lockstep tonight.
That's right. Let's move on here. In the bantamweight division, Mario Bautista defeated Damon Blackshear by UD 29-28, 29-28, and a 30-27. Omar, let me start with you. What was your impression of Mario Bautista getting it done on the scorecards?
This was a scrap, dude. This was a scrap. This was a really tough fight. I found it a little tough to score as well, especially like throughout that fight. It felt very back and forth. By the end of it, I thought Bautista had done enough. I don't know if I'm going to subscribe to the 30-27 that one of the judges gave them. It felt very much like a 29-28 fight. But I mean, I think in reality, the second round might have been the one round where you can kind of argue whether it was Bautista's or Blackshear's. I thought first round was clearly Blackshear's round. I thought the third round was clearly Bautista's round. So the second one for me was the toss-up round out of all of them. If you told me you gave it to Blackshear, I'm not going to die on the hill for it. I thought it was Bautista's, but it was a close fight regardless, but it was definitely a scrap. I mean, Blackshear coming off of 1 week of having fought last week and performing like that again, he didn't get the W, but he still made a very good accounting of himself in that fight.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we're in lockstep again here, pretty much. This was a close fight. It was a tough one to score. Round 2 was obviously the swing round, and it was really, really close. Like, nothing too significant happened in that round compared to the others. Both guys were landing some shots, not too many. Bautista was pressuring, but Blackshear was kind of doing well to pick at him from range or step in as he was getting pressured. It's like almost a preference round. It was very close. I had it for Blackshear live. On the rewatch, gun to my head, I think I still do, but like it was nearly a coin flip round. And it doesn't shock me that Bautista took a decision. The fact that it was unanimous maybe surprised me a little bit. And as we said, the 30-27 was trash. But I could absolutely see it being 29-28 for Mario. And he didn't have an easy fight at all. You could see his skills and his cardio start to shine a bit more in round 3 once he had spent some time in there with Blackshear and kind of got to adjust to what he brought to the cage. But early on, you could tell he was a little bit off of the game that we usually see from him. I think that late opponent switch was something he maybe didn't get to fully adapt to. And Damon looked good. He got a big opportunity. He showed he can hang. He fought a tough fight, and he nearly took it. But he faded late, and it cost him, and Bautista grinds it out and gets himself a W.
Yeah, man. Staying with you, Mark, and moving along here, what do you think could be next for Bautista?
It's another easy one. I'm not sure how long Cody is out, but again, why not go right back to it? It made sense the first time. I still like it now. That's where I go.
Omar, do you agree?
I do concur.
Do you concur, Doctor? Shall we move on to the Chito fight?
Wait, you hate matching up these losers. Like you have.
Oh shit!
My bad.
You have an affinity of just. You both just said fuck Blackshear.
Usually I'm like, wait.
But just kind of like Bautista, I think Blackshear needs to go back to the guy that he was originally slated for, and let's give him Brady Highstand. Hopefully Brady Highstand is going to be ready in time. I'm not sure exactly what happened to him in the first place, but I think Blackshear could take a little bit of time off and get with Brady Highstand when he's ready. Hopefully not too long.
I forgot that was a thing. That is a good fight. I had thought of Ronnie Yaya just to see the ridiculous scrambles on the ground and see if one could tap the other one. But yeah, I'm fine with Brady as well. I know Yaya has a fight, but I feel like win or lose, it works either way.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Also in the bantamweight division, in the bout that opened up the main card of UFC 292, Sterling versus O'Malley, Marlon Chito Vera got it done over Pedro Munhoz by unanimous decision. The scorecards were at 30-27, 30-27, and 29-28, all for the winner, Vera. Omar, let's start with you. Give us your take and your impressions of Chito getting it done.
Man, when we were watching this fight live, when we were getting this round one, we were like, man, Chito's got to get going from moment one. He can't let any of this moment pass. And round one's going, and we're like, all right, well, I think he let round one go. I think we let that one go. So I thought it started off a little rough in that regard. I definitely thought he dropped round one. Round two, I thought got a little bit more competitive from Chito's side as far as the damage that Munhoz was taking. And as the fight went on, I was getting the feeling that Chito might have been up on the scorecards just because of the amount of damage that Munhoz was wearing throughout that fight, even in round one, to be honest. And like we've alluded to earlier in this episode so far, Chito doesn't tend to wear a whole hell of a lot in a fight. Like it's very rare to see him beat up and damaged and even visibly fucking bruised. Like his body doesn't even bruise. So it's weird to see Munhoz taking that much damage when I thought Munhoz looked like the more active fighter, looked like he was throwing more volume, looked like he was just doing a little bit more in that fight. But Chito was just landing, I think, the harder strikes, the ones that were more solid, the ones that were doing more damage. And I feel like that just continues to be the story of Chito Vera. I don't think he got all three rounds. Like I said, I do think he lost round one. Definitely by the time we got to round three, I had that one for Chito. I think that's probably the least difficult round to score. But round two, round two is a little sketchy. Sketchy.
Okay. Mark?
So we're finally a little different, which in terms of the rounds, which you'll see what I mean. But yeah, this was a really close competitive fight. Munhoz came out and set the tone early with volume, which of course he knows and we know and everyone knows that Chito tends to start slow, so that was the right thing for him to do. As the round went on, Chito did respond a bit and open up. Maybe not as much as we wanted to, but definitely more than usual. But with that said, watching live, I still thought Chito had dropped round one. And at the end of the fight, because I also gave round two to Munhoz, I was like, wow, what a gift he just got with that decision. But I've now rewatched round one, well, the whole fight, but I've rewatched round one twice to score it. And both times I scored it for Marlon Vera. Munhoz missed more than you think in that round. Vera lands the bigger shots in that round, and to me, that's the swing round of the fight. The second round, Munhoz, I thought, took it. I know like 90% on them made decisions, I believe, had the second for Munhoz. Most had the first from, I think it was like 60 had the first from Munhoz, so I think more had it for Munhoz than Vera. But yeah, in the second, Vera landed, I thought, significantly less clean than he had in the first, and obviously less clean than he did in the third. But I thought Munhoz dictated that round and took that round. But then in the third, Chito rose to the occasion. He had his best round. He stung Pedro multiple times. He had all the biggest moments of the fight in that round. And I do think the length mattered in the end for Chito, which is what I kind of leaned on in my preview of this fight, because the jab was a big factor. And anytime they had like their quick firefight exchanges, it was Chito landing a bit more and a bit cleaner because he was kind of standing just outside of Munhoz's range in those firefight exchanges. And then combine that with the fact that he can take a shot as good as anyone, and he's the harder hitter of the two. It was enough. It was enough to edge these cards. And I thought he won it pride style as well based on the third round. And then, like I said, on my rewatches, I actually was like, shit, I got to give him the first. So I am glad the decision went his way. At first, I was like, oh, shit, but I'm glad it did. And, yeah, as we mentioned, I'm curious to see if he just walked himself right into a title fight.
Yeah. Could be. And we talked about earlier, that probably could make the most sense for the division and for the belt and for the promotion. So we don't really need to talk about what is next for Chito, because we've kind of already been over that with the main event. But Mark, let's talk about Pedro Munhoz and where he could go from here.
Yeah, and Chito's so easy too. Like, if it isn't a title fight and they were like, he's fighting Merab, he's fighting Cejudo, he's fighting Jan, all of it would be like, wow, sick. You know, it's like, fight any of these dudes. He hasn't fought so many of them yet. Munhoz, yeah, he almost pulled that off, man. He's still damn good. He's a guy that was almost getting not written off, but he was kind of getting looked over a few fights back, and the dude is still right there. So I'm going to give him a shot in a pretty meaningful fight. I will say the winner of Jonathan Martinez and Adrian Yanez should fight Pedro Munhoz.
Ooh. Omar, any other bright ideas?
So I did put Garbrandt 2 on there. It's been a minute since they fought, and I believe Garbrandt got knocked out by Munhoz. I still think Garbrandt should fight, what's his face? Mario Bautista, just because that was already scheduled. But if that doesn't happen, I also did have Martinez and Yanez on my bingo card here, but I had the loser of Yanez and Martinez. I don't hate the winner, but that was just where I went.
Okay. Before we get into the lightning round, boys, we have one more fight that we're going to reach down into the prelims and talk about, and that's the fight that was the feature bout on the prelims on ESPN and ESPN Plus. In the middleweight division, the return of the former UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman, and he squared off against the middleweight veteran in Brad Tavares, and Brad Tavares comes away with a fairly dominant unanimous decision victory over Weidman, 30-27 on all three of the judges' scorecards. Mark, let's start with you this time. What was your take on this fight overall?
That it was not my favorite result on the card. And I like Brad too, but man, the Weidman music hits. You see the walkout, the emotion on his face. I was really pulling for some vintage Chris Weidman performance here, but it was not in the cards. He looked very uncomfortable striking for the first 5 minutes or so of that fight, which, is completely understandable after all that time off, but he did. He did have some success striking in round 2 and even a bit in round 3 once he started pushing the pace and pressuring, which was fun to see. But the reason that he started that was because his leg had gotten chewed to bits, and that pressuring was like the only option he really had left. So by that time, it was kind of already too late. It was something he wasn't coming back from. He was hobbled. It even hit a point where it was almost both legs, because then Brad started to hurt the leg that had surgery. The one that was badly damaged was the other one. And Brad just knew that at any time necessary, he could just reset, go back to a leg kick, and change the fight. And the pressure was going to stop for however long until Chris could muster up, the next burst. So could you argue Brad should have found a finish with the way Chris's legs were? Maybe. But Weidman is a really tough dude, and he didn't want to go away, to his credit. But props to Tavares, because he won every round. He fought a really clean, really intelligent fight, and he got himself a win over a former champion, so it's a big one for him.
Yeah, man. Omar, what are your thoughts?
My thoughts was I hated it. I also got super emotional when the walkout music for Chris Weidman came on. Was not expecting it. I thought we were just gonna, just another fight. We were just, we were just here, right, watching a pay-per-view, or watching the end of the prelims anyway. But yeah, I got super emotional, and I started thinking about all the times I've seen Weidman's dad at events, and Weidman's dad cheering for this dude. Until I've never been to a Weidman fight yet where I've seen Weidman win. So watching his dad see his son lose every time bums me the fuck out. And it was one of those things. It just all came back when I heard his music, and I was like, damn, I really want Weidman to win. Like, maybe this is it. Maybe he comes back and he looks great. And Weidman had been kind of playing up the whole, I'm going to throw a leg kick at the very first second of the fight. I don't think he threw a leg kick the entire fight in there. So I didn't care for the way he looked, man. He looked really hesitant. He looked really concerned, just uncomfortable. I don't want to say concerned. He looked uncomfortable in the octagon completely. Even the takedowns and stuff like that, it did not look like he was an all-American wrestler in that fight. He looked very, very uncomfortable in everything that he was doing. He definitely took a lot of damage on both of those legs. He's another one who, just like Magny, was like hobbling around for a while and hopping around trying to put weight on it and things like that. It really got to a point where I was like, Chris Weidman shouldn't be doing this shit anymore. Like, I love Chris Weidman. I've enjoyed watching him in his career. I've loved all the things that all the barriers he's essentially broken down trying to, or beating all of these legends from that era and stuff like that. But I don't want to watch that again. That was not fun. I did not have fun watching that fight. Not even a little bit. So I don't want it. I don't want it anymore.
I'm with you guys. And of course, soon afterwards, Chris Weidman either posted something on his social or made some kind of public comment where he's like, "This ain't it, boys. I'll be back better than ever."
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Omar?
I think it's a fucking lie. I don't think he's gonna come back better. I think if he was gonna come back better, he would have came back better now. What is the difference between now and later? Time that's gonna make him slower. That's gonna make his leg probably not nearly as strong as it was before. I don't see it, man. Like, I get it. I can only imagine how addictive it is to walk out, all these people cheering for you, everybody wanting you to succeed, the money that you get from it, the fame, all of it. I can only imagine how addictive that shit is. But like, as a fan, purely as a fan, I don't want to see Chris Weidman get in a fight where I don't even feel like he's competitive in. And I think Tavares gave him leeway to survive in that fight, right? I do think he fought a smart fight and stuff like that, but I do think there was a bit of a respect portion of it from Tavares as well, because I think if it was somebody else, Tavares very well might have pushed the pace. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. I want good things for Chris Weidman from like a life perspective, not necessarily just a fight perspective. And I feel like the longer he's in this fighting this way, the more likely he's going to get really fucking hurt in one of these fights. And I just don't want to be there to see it.
According to TotalSports.com, Chris Weidman got $400K. So if I was him, I'd be like, let's go. Let's keep this thing going as long as I can. I would, man, for that money, for one night of work. I mean, obviously, yes, it's not one night. But that's some fucking good bread, man. $400,000.
It is, but you also have to take into consideration how many times, like, at what point do you tarnish your legacy, right? That you're just losing and losing, and I don't think we're at that point yet, right? Chris Weidman is still trying to figure things out, and maybe he does retire, maybe he doesn't, but he's also now still like losing in front of his kids, like his family was there. It's too much, man. I don't know. For me, it just seems like it's too much.
And also, how long is he about to be out? Like, what if he needs another surgery? That leg was pretty fucked up.
The both of them were. The right one for sure, but the both of them were fucking jacked by the end of that.
For sure.
He had the right one wrapped up, not the left one, by the end of that fight.
Dude, Brad Tavares
Here, I'll
has
show you.
tree trunks for legs.
The right one is the one he had surgery on, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was the other one that was getting destroyed in that fight.
Correct.
I guess that makes sense. As soon as the fight's over, you wrap up the one that you just had surgery on. I guess that makes sense. But I would have thought if there was a new injury, it would be in the left one.
All right, check your phones. Send you pictures.
But either way, point remains. Like, if he needs another surgery, say he's had another year.
Yeah.
Like, at that point, he might be like, why am I doing this? Oh, I did see this. I saw this whole exchange.
Oh, yeah, me too. He was all wrapped up, man.
Yep.
I don't know. I certainly wouldn't mind if he walked away either. For some reason, if he's out another year, then like I kind of hope he just says, all right, enough. If he's not, for some reason, I'm kind of like he should have one more before I try to force him out the door. I don't know why.
And who do you think that could be against, Mark?
Yeah, I don't know why I'm just not 100% there yet. Like, I feel like he could look all right in his next one and maybe have a few more in him. But if there is one more, I will say let's do Gerald Meerschaert. It feels like an appropriate fight for Chris at this point. Still a guy with danger, maybe one he could win. That's where I go.
What do you think, Omar?
I was actually going with Eric Anders. I think Eric Anders is a relatively beatable fighter. But I think it's also a good opportunity for Anders, too, to fight a champion. Kind of see where he's, or former champion, I should say, and see where he's at. But it's also a fight that I think is winnable for Weidman as well. A dangerous fight, because Eric Anders, when he's on, is a very, very dangerous fight. So let's see what he's got. I'm not trying to put Chris Weidman in there with somebody who I can see him getting completely knocked out Stone Cold from.
I couldn't stomach that, man. At least if Mearshart beat him, it's like, all right, Gerald Mearshart like pulls off these wins where he beats dudes. If Eric Anders beat him, I'd be like, oh boy.
But that's what that's what I want though. Like if Eric Anders beats him, that's when I know without a shadow of a doubt this shit needs to end.
Yeah.
Like we need to be done.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Well, okay. Let's hop into our lightning round for the
Can we match
remainder.
up the guy who won the fight? Would you mind?
So sorry.
Yeah, he got a big win. He did lose 2 in a row prior to this win, so I'm not going to give him any huge jump. I feel like he's kind of got to win another one to build up that momentum before he's in any type of a bigger fight. But a guy who won on this card that we're going to get to in a little bit, I think Tavares would actually be the perfect test for him, and that man is Andre Petrosky.
Look at us.
Oh my
Look at
God.
us with the
Really?
picks today.
We
Look
have
at us
never
with the
had a
picks
night like
today.
this. Wow. This is wild. Wow. There you go.
Okay.
Go ahead now, Mike.
Okay, sorry. I'm just trying to do my fucking hostly duties. All right, the lightning round is where I challenge Mark and Omar to give me their quick takes. Perhaps. And we fall short, guys. We fall short. We're human. We're fallible. It's okay. But every week we reconvene and we do it again. All right, here we go. In the middleweight division, Gregory Rodriguez defeats Dennis Tululin by first round annihilation. Omar, go first.
Yeah, man. Robocop looked real good in this fight.
You started saying
Caught
Robo and
yourself.
you're like, nope.
Caught myself. Gotta pronounce things properly.
I will not.
He looked good in this fight, though, man. It definitely gave me vibes of, I know I got knocked out in my last fight. I'm not even going to attempt to give you the chance to do that shit to me in this fight. And immediately went for the takedown, brought him right down to the ground. And got to be honest, man, some of the nicest passing I've seen in a little while. Like, he passed the shit out of Tululin's guard. Or it wasn't Tululin, right? It's
Tululin, yeah.
Is it Tululin? I thought they.
Yeah.
I know Buffer pronounced it one way, and I think they pronounced it a different
unless
way
they
on the
changed
broadcast.
It's been Tululin going into that. Maybe he's fucking changed.
I think Anik said Tulian, I think, or something like that. Whatever. Either way, Dennis definitely got run over on the ground. He got passed from mount or from full guard right into side control. And then that step over into mount was fucking nasty. And then it was just, it was a murder from there. I mean,
Yeah.
I know people were kind of going back and forth about that first elbow that he landed, that it might have been a little bit too far back on the head or something like that. But from looking at the replay, it might have been a little sketchy, but they all seemed like legal shots in the end. It was a great performance from Hobocop. Really good.
Mark.
Gregory Rodriguez finally shows the grappling. It is all I wanted to see. It's like Bigfoot. You always hear about it. Hard to believe it's real, though. And now we finally know. Not only is it real, but it is filthy. I cannot believe this man has grappling like that, and he waited until his 7th UFC fight to actually use it. He sliced through Tululin like butter, right into side control, right into mount, then to back control, and then he did murder. I honestly thought he might have killed Tululin with one of those elbows. I'm not joking. I had like a one Mississippi moment where I was like, oh my God. Like I really, and I was like, okay, no. But like there was a second where I was like, did he just kill him? Like it was.
He really hurt him. Yeah.
It was a bad one.
He elbowed him into dust.
Yeah.
He elbowed him into dust, and it was a little hard to watch. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on. In the lightweight division, Kurt Hollabaugh defeats Austin Hubbard by submission via triangle choke in round number 2, in doing so becoming the TUF 31 lightweight winner. Mark, go.
Yeah, Hubbard was looking strong and fast early. The wrestling was working. It looked like he was edging the striking. And, it kind of looked like it might go how we had imagined in this one. This was one of the few we got wrong on this card. But there was a time like mid-round 1 where you could tell Hollabaugh had kind of settled in and he was getting his timing down a little bit. And then round 2 came, and it was more accentuated, and he landed on Hubbard, kept the pressure, backed him up, knocked him off balance, and then once he got Hubbard's back, and then mount, You knew Hubbard was in a lot of trouble because Kurt has some dangerous grappling, but my God, did he ever show it. That armbar transition to the triangle when Hubbard rolled was chef's kiss. And what a way to become the ultimate fighter for Kurt Holobaugh.
Omar.
I mean, yeah, dude. The only thing I'll really add to that, man, is the actual finish itself. There are not a lot of guys pulling off transitions like that in the middle of submissions in the UFC anymore, unless they're guys like Charles Oliveira or like, you know, the really high guys who rely on their jiu-jitsu at every turn, essentially. Like, definitely not something I expected from Kurt Holobaugh. I know his jiu-jitsu is really good, but that transition was just so perfect. The timing was so perfect. The feeling of it, right? From him switching from that armbar, from the roll, and just using that momentum to switch into that triangle was like fucking brilliant. I mean, it's one of the more beautiful things you'll see. Really good performance from him. Tough fight up until that point, but beautiful finish from him, and congratulations on being the new tough winner.
Okay. In the bantamweight division, Brad Katona defeats Cody Gibson by UD, in doing so becoming the tough 31 bantamweight winner. Omar, staying with you, go.
Yeah, dog. This was a dog fight. Cody Gibson was plodding forward the entire time, and I think a lot of times when we see fights like that, we see guys back up a lot. We see guys trying to move out of the way, trying to find a moment to reset so that they can kind of get back into the fight or change the momentum or something like that. And guys like Cody Gibson don't really give many people the opportunity to find that moment to reset. And Brad Katona said, fine, fuck it. You don't want me to reset? I'm just going to throw everything I have as I'm moving back, as I'm moving side to side. Maybe I'll come forward if you take a step back. And they went to war, my guy. I mean, this was a crazy-ass fight from beginning to end. They landed a few clean shots on each other throughout that fight. But once we got into that third round, it seemed like Brad Katona broke Cody Gibson's eye. And it was just kind of the beginning of the end. He stole that whole round right at the end. I didn't think it was 30-27. I thought it was a little bit closer than that. I thought Gibson might have had the first round in that fight, and then I thought Katona had rounds 2 and round 3 was close up until the point where Gibson's eye just kind of exploded, and then Katona just put it on him from there. But it looked like when they were reading the decision, Cody Gibson knew that he had lost that fight. So as close as I felt that fight was, me picking Brad Katona at the end of that fight didn't make me feel like I was wrong, because it seemed like Cody Gibson also knew he might have lost that fight. But an amazing fight nonetheless. Definitely fight of the night candidate. I don't know if they got fight of the night. I have no idea who won the awards, but
God, I certainly hope they did. I don't understand what else could have.
That was a crazy ass fight, and one of consequence, right? With the winner of Brad Katona being a new tough champion, a second time tough champion, the only two-time tough champion in history now at this point. So congrats to him. Great fight.
Yeah, man. Mark?
Yeah, I don't know what the fuck to even say. I feel like nothing I say is going to do this fight justice. Like, that was the modern-day Stephan Bonner versus Forrest Griffin in terms of tough finales. That thing was fucking unbelievable. The pace that these two guys pushed. After round 1, I didn't think there was any way it could stay that high for 10 more minutes, and I think it got higher. And props to Cody Gibson for the pressure that he brought, because that's what made the fight what it was. But holy hell, let's give some credit to Brad Katona, man. He's a guy who gets knocked at times for, you know, his style, and he fought the entire fight without wrestling, without grappling, without controlling, just fighting in a damn phone booth against a much bigger man, and he beat him. He took big damage, he returned bigger damage, and he beat him. That says a lot about Brad Katona, and he is now, as you said, the first ever two-time tough champ, and I'm very interested to see what this second run could look like, because even when he got let go the first time, he was one of those guys where it was like, oh, they let go of Katona, huh? He seemed like he was pretty good, and he hasn't lost since they let him go. Now he's back. To see him look like that, it's like, shit, this guy maybe should have been here the whole time.
Yeah. I can tell you this, too, real quick.
We better see Cody Gibson again, too, for what it's worth.
100%. They both need to be in the UFC. Cody Gibson better not get shafted on this business here. Like, I know he lost, but Stephen Bonner got a contract to the UFC as well. So just keep that in mind. But real quick, Brackettona had a huge ass hematoma on the side of his face, like really bad. And that boy wears glasses. So I'm interested how that's going to work out for him for the next week or so before that goes down.
Oh, man.
Okay, let's move on. In the feature bout on the early prelims in the middleweight division, Andre Petroski defeats Gerald Meerschaert by split decision. Mark, go.
I don't know what to say about who I think should have won this fight. I've watched the first round twice, and it is the drawiest round there could be. We know Petroski won the second. We know Meerschaert won the third. But I just have no reason to preach about how either guy should have won this fight because it legitimately feels 50-50 to me. I don't even know who won the fight if we wanted to look at it pride scoring wise. I just feel like it was a draw in every facet of the fight. That's really how I felt. It was an even fight. Both guys battled. Both guys dug deep at times. Both guys had some moments. Both guys had some ugly moments as well, I would say. It was just like it was a good, fair fight, man. But Petroski gets the nod from 2 out of 3. When there's 3 judges, someone's got to get 2 of them, and he got it.
Omar.
Yeah, not the most technical fight you've ever seen. Petroski needs to tighten up on the striking a little bit more. I think he needs to work on his setups a little bit more, less of the telegraphed winging and things like that, because you saw when he landed and he actually put pause on Gerald Meerschaert. I mean, he dropped. Meerschaert went right down like a sack of shit. And credit to his chin, too, for keeping him awake and working through it. But that was a loud crack that he got hit with. And I think if Petroski was able to do that more consistently throughout the fight, using setups, using feints, using his jab, frankly, for that matter, I think he'd be a little bit more successful overall, especially if he's not going to wrestle, right? Like if wrestling is not going to be his primary bread and butter every time he goes out there, regardless of the fact that this guy can submit you and this, that, and whatever, then you got to get your hands tight if you're going to end up relying on your hands. And I just don't think he did himself. I think against somebody else who doesn't also rely on his hands very often and also relies on a ground game, Petroski might have gotten a little bit smashed in that fight. But it was a good fight overall. I thought it was still pretty competitive. I do agree with Mark that it was a very drawy kind of fight. It was very back and forth. The momentum kept shifting significantly back and forth with different sequences that went on in that fight. So round 1 I thought was a toss-up for sure. But 2 and 3 I thought were very clear.
Okay, let's move on. In the women's flyweight division, Natalia Silva defeats Andrea Lee by UD. Omar, staying with you. Go.
Dog, this was another one where I didn't like the way Andrea Lee looked in that fight. She looked incredibly uncomfortable the entire time. I think a lot of it had to do with the way that Silva approached that fight and was just tearing her apart. The shorter fighter was staying on the outside and working this girl. I mean, Andrea Lee had no answer for her, and you could see as the fight kept progressing, you could see her trying to think and calculate. It's like that meme of that older woman with all the math problems all over her face. Like she looked significantly lost in that fight, trying to figure out an entry for Silva. Her corner, frankly, didn't seem like they were of any help to her at all. It was a beautiful performance from Silva and kind of a telling performance from Andrea Lee that I'm not sure where she's supposed to go from here.
Mark?
Natalia Silva is just nonstop hip feints. I don't know if I've ever seen a fighter who has more. Like it was there wasn't 3 seconds that passed without a hip feint. It's impressive that she can even concentrate enough on her footwork while integrating all these hip feints. I feel like I would never even be able to think through it, but God can she. I mean, Andrea Lee is a volume fighter who got out-volumed in every single round. The speed and technique of Silva is just crazy. She was never once in trouble the whole fight. She coasted the whole way through, and she is already a top 10 flyweight in my book, 4 fights into her UFC career.
Okay, last one, boys. Karine Silva in the opening bout of UFC 292. Karine Silva, round 1 sub over Marina Moroz. Mark, go.
This was wild. It starts off with the two of them exchanging, and for like 2 minutes, it seems like Silva doesn't even want to mess with throwing hands. Like, just wants to kick and try to close the range, looking for a takedown. And then next thing you know, she throws a beautiful left hook, and Munhoz is on her ass. And to Marina's credit, she jumps right up. They got to scrapping again, and Silva looks for the takedown and gets it. And for a second, when she hunted that guillotine, it looked like she blew it and gave up the position. But she reset it. She cranked the neck and it got a tap with 1 second to spare, which obviously sucks for Munhoz that she probably could have lasted that one more. But enormous win for Karine Silva.
Omar, bring it home.
Yeah, dog. I don't know, man. That tapping with one, like you, I would imagine you heard the clap, right? You had to have heard the 10-second clap. At that point, if I'm getting choked out, I'm not tapping. Like, choke me out. You know what I mean? Like, dude, put me to sleep.
The 10 seconds is so long when you're being choked.
I
your
get
mind, it. You could be like, there's still 5 more. Like, you have no idea. If there was a
then I go out
and you were hearing someone go 3, 2, I bet you could make it through the 1.
I would just choke me out. I'm not tapping. Now, if there's a key lock, right? Somebody's got my arm and that shit is about to like break through or something okay, tap. 1 second left, tap to that shit. I don't disagree with that. A choke though, you be all right. Hold that shit in, man. Fuck, hold that shit in. Come on. As far as the fight itself is concerned, though, I mean, I thought it was a good fight. The boxing combinations ended up being really good for Silva. Munhoz definitely had a good accounting of herself up until that point, but man, you can't tell me she's not beating herself up about that. Like, she definitely went back to that hotel room like 1 second and looking at her corner like, you fucking people couldn't tell me there was 1 second left. I don't know, man. I don't want to give her too much shit. It's obviously being in the fire and stuff like that, but that one I think is going to eat at her for a bit.
And that does it. Our complete recap of UFC 292.